Today we are getting behind the wheel of this 1965 Volvo P1800S, a car that has been fully restored, looks absolutely sensational, and I can't wait to drive it.
The P1800 was pitched by Volvo. It was marketed by Volvo as a car that was as exotic or as avant-garde as cars that cost 2 and 3 times what it cost. It was compared directly with a DB6 and a Jag and possibly even a 12-cylinder Ferrari, a Ferrari 250 or something of the ilk. And if you looked at the merit of the styling alone, that wasn't the most preposterous thing in the world, albeit under the skin, the Volvo was far, far more humble than any of the expensive stuff.
The advertising was, you can get a $10,000 car for $3,995. It's a beautiful, sloopy, coupey design.
It's got a beautiful glass house with unusually small rear quarter windows that don't echo the shape of the car but really work really well.
It's a bit American, you know, with the wings on the back of the quarter panels, all of the chrome on it. Beautiful interior, very well made. The quality, you could see the quality in the build in this car.
It took them so long to develop this car. The only thing that they ever actually knew they were going to use was the B18.
Right.
And the gearbox. So they took the underpinnings of one of the most robust cars in the world and they decided that the brand needed a sports car.
Yeah, right.
But they actually ended up marketing it as a sport touring car.
Right.
So,
yeah, well, I get that. The way it drives, it's not incredibly sporty. It's a little bit doughy, a bit soft. It turns in nicely once you get past that bit of slack in the middle.
Bit of free play.
Gearbox is beautiful.
Is good.
Yeah, I mean, just a lovely little shifter, very short shifter.
The people responsible for the project went to Frua, which was an Italian company, and Frua laid down what we were told were prototype sketches for the car. And when you look at it, I don't think that it screams Italian design.
Well, it's interesting because it doesn't really look like an Italian design. It's a great sounding engine, seriously. For an engine, like, I've got to tell you, I love simplicity in cars because they're a lot easier to work on, right? These engines are so simple, so simple. The motor is willing, like, you just have the throttle response is fantastic. There's no lag, there's no popping and farting, there's no Webers going, I don't really want to start working yet until I'm at 5,000 revs.
You know, we haven't even touched on probably the most important thing about this car, right? There's a handful of cars in the world that have become twice as important or important at all because they were in films and TV shows.
Right.
So Roger Moore drove one of these in the Saint. Yeah. So people call it the Saint car.
They do?
They do. And that's an interesting thing, you know. Like,
but does that help it or does that hurt it? And, you know,
I think it helps it. I mean, absolutely nobody would know what a DB5 was if Bond didn't have one.
Great exhaust note, sounded really good, sounded willing, lovely little gear shift on it. They're very simple engines, a pushrod engine, very basic in its design.
The B18 is a bulletproof engine. You know, Irv Gordon, an American gentleman, has done something like 3.5 million miles in a B18 powered P1800S. If the B18 engine was a person, it wouldn't be like me. It would be a lot quieter. It would be a lot less exuberant person, but it would continue far longer than I would. It is actually a more sprightly car than what you'd think. Yeah. Even pulling away. Notice how I used the clutch to engage the overdrive? Do it without. And I very easily turned on the wipers so I can see where I'm going. Well, it's got the world's most incredibly wandering steering.
Well, I'm sure that's just the steering box.
I also sit very upright in this car.
For a car about safety, there's no headrests in this car.
Yeah, that's quite ironic, isn't it? They bash on about being the first people in the world to give you seatbelts without asking, but they managed to completely ignore headrests.
You've got to admit, through the corners, this thing is pretty delightful.
It's good. It's good. I don't know that you'd want to go really hard at it. I don't know.
Not with the tyres that are on it.
No. I'm going to have to take issue with this car's amount of ventilation or lack thereof. It's very hot.
I'm getting good ventilation to my feet now.
Yeah. What was the first car that had eyeball vents in the dash? I can't understand why it was something that took so long. Just put a vent in the dash.
But look, all of these cars had these vent windows on the side, so you crack those open.
Yes, but you couldn't do anything once that was open.
Well, you can't do anything when it's raining because it just directs the rain right into your face.
It's got a very, very, very direct and accurate gear shift.
Yeah, because the stick goes straight into the gearbox.
Yeah, like an Alpha.
Yeah. Yeah, but the Alpha's not as nice as that.
You must be joking. You know what journos say about Alfa Romeo gearboxes? It's like spooning honey. I always like thinking about the people who would have bought these cars new and how they would have used them and what they would have done with them and where they would have gone. And back in those days, before air travel was, really cheap, they'd probably have used cars like this to drive across the continent.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if you did that in an Alpha, you would arrive a broken man or a woman.
Yeah.
But if you did that in this car, you'd be okay.
This is a great touring sports car.
It's a fabby touring sports car. I do really like it. I didn't know what to expect. That was the good thing about it. I approached it with a completely open mind, and it felt more like an English car to me than anything else, in that the steering wheel was close to you, your legs were out straight like they are in a Healy or something of the ilk. You looked forward at these beautifully crafted instruments that were stamped with Smiths, so yet another kind of English thing, but Smiths instruments, but they were elaborate. They almost give you a feel of being in something American. And the two-spoke steering wheel has these beautiful holes punched in the spokes, so they gave you that feeling that it's a sports car, it has an intent. Really delicate gear shift, really precise, and well-placed pedals and good visibility out of the car, and you really can't say that there's anything particularly untoward about the car or wrong. But to me, it's not one of those cars that wills you to go really quick. It's not like an Alfa Romeo or a Porsche of the time. It doesn't want to make you drive it really hard. It's a car which is enjoyable to drive, and you could go a long way in it. You could do a really long drive. You could go anywhere. So let's talk about the value proposition of these cars. Volvo P1800s. They're a car that had a movie star career. So, you put Roger Moore in a car and put him on a television program, everybody recognises it. Therefore, you would think that they are there, and they have a premium attached to them. The really interesting thing is if you get on the internet today and try and find one, you're probably going to struggle. And if you do, it may be something that you pay as little as, 30 grand for, mid-30s.
It's got the looks. They're practical, they're easy to work on, parts are relatively cheap. I mean, there's very, very few cars in the classic car market that you can have all of those things and get under $50,000.